Today, I'm taking an 8-hour flight in British Airways Club Suite business class from London Heathrow to New York JFK. I'll show you why it's actually surprisingly one of my favourite business class products, but that despite the positive in-flight experience, the ground experience is really pretty poor, and takes the shine off what would otherwise be a fantastic airline for business class. The seat is a big upgrade on their terrible older club seat, so let's see if it's worth the money and lives up to the hype. Arriving in the check-in hall of Heathrow Terminal 5, there's one large business class check-in area at each end of the building, and the queue was pretty massive, taking about 15 or 20 minutes to get to our turn, so hardly a premium experience there. We were also asked to provide proof of a return flight home from the US, so make sure you have that if you're travelling to the US. Continuing the theme of this terminal being busy, here you can see the long line for the main BA Gallery's North Lounge, and there's another lounge at the south end of the terminal, but in my experience that one is always packed too. So we decided to head to the lounge in the B Satellite Concourse, which tends to be a bit quieter. It's a quick train ride away, but just note the train only goes one way, so if you want to go back you have to walk, which will become relevant later in the video. So here we are at the B Gates Club Lounge. It's slightly smaller than the two lounges in the main terminal building, but does tend to be a bit less crowded, though today it was almost full. It is actually quite a nice lounge with good varied seating options and a well-stocked bar. The toilets and shower though are very shabby relative to the rest of the lounge's appearance, and the food was just average. Here they have a little picnic counter with stuff like Scotch eggs and sandwiches. There's also only a few cooked food options and they're all pretty basic, but the sticky toffee pecan cake was a winner. I got a salmon fish cake, Spanish beans and rice, and it was okay, but I didn't want to eat too much as I had a full flight of eating ahead of me. We then saw this special livery 777-200, which I actually flew once from Beijing to London, and you can find my review of that premium economy flight in the description below. Now here is the Boeing 777-300 BA are using for our flight today, but it's not our exact plane, as annoyingly we had a bus gate, which as the map shows was about a 10-minute bus ride from the main terminal, and that also meant we had to walk back from the satellite terminal to the main terminal to catch our bus, which was especially annoying as we'd headed over there in the first place on the assumption that we'd be flying from the B or C gate. The gate area was also extremely crowded with barely any seating, and yet again showing how Terminal 5 needs an expansion. So after more than 10 minutes on the bus, we finally arrived at the aircraft, a 12-year-old Boeing 777-300 with 8 first-class seats, a whopping 76 business-class seats, 40 premium seats, and just 132 economy seats, making this an extremely premium-heavy layout. Our flight would take us out over the Atlantic before swooping down over Canada to arrive in New York pretty much exactly on time. And it was a fully daytime flight too. Also here's the seat map showing the business cabin in a 1-2-1 layout. I paid £105 extra for my seat by the engine, and it feels slightly scammy for BA to be charging that much for a business class seat, but every seat is pretty much the same, so you could just wait until check-in. I just wanted a good view for the video. We then walked up the slightly filthy stairs onto the plane, and I'm pleased to say that now that we're finally on board, the complaining will stop. Almost the whole experience for the rest of the trip was excellent, so without further ado, let's find our seat for today's flight, 10K. Waiting at your seat is a huge pillow, blanket and mattress topper set, water bottle, headphones and amenity kit. You also get served a choice of champagne, orange juice or water on boarding, which was nice. And the headphones are fine, but nothing special, and certainly not noise cancelling. And I like the tray table a lot too. It slides out from under your TV and is on sliders which get lower as they come towards you. So the half down state is perfect for drinks and small plates and gives you space to leave your seat if needed, whilst the lowest state comes down towards you and sits in a perfect position to eat when the seat is upright. There's also plenty of storage space, though none of the nooks and crannies are really big enough for a bag. You have this space with power and USB sockets and the remote control. Then there's a space down here which just about fit my shirt and safety instructions. And there's another shallow tray which can fit a phone or AirPods case, for example. Finally, a side cabinet with a mirror, which fits the water bottle and amenity kit. And here's what's inside that amenity kit with a few toiletries from the White Company. It's good enough, but definitely less luxurious than some airlines. There's also a small side screen with seat controls, which was kinda grubby. And a small reading light by the headrest. The pillow is also huge and very soft, perfect if you need to sleep, but on a daytime flight like this it kind of just got in the way. And also you get a soft blanket and mattress topper from the White Company. I also found the fabric seat padding to be quite soft and comfortable, but I would prefer if you could adjust the height of the headrest. Also, it's got a proper 3-point seatbelt. And lastly, the door, which looks like this and really adds a lot of privacy when closed. Running slightly behind schedule, we began our taxi to the runway and the safety video started playing, which I quite like. It's very British.
Devices should have the flight safe mode feature enabled now. It is underneath or beside your seat. If required, remove the jacket from its container and pull it over your head. Masks have been pointed out to you now. Eyes on the devices unplugged and window blinds are open. Whoever you see.
By the way, there was a Royal Brunei Boeing 787, which you can find my review of in the description below. Now sit back and enjoy a pretty impressive takeoff out of London Heathrow with great views of the main terminal buildings. Now onto the food and drink service. A menu is handed out before takeoff, so just pause the video if you want to read it in detail. You get a choice of 3 starters and 3 mains, or of course you can choose from the numerous special dietary options. On the side there was also an interesting warm triple bread construct, which you'll see in a moment, plus a salad. Then just before landing there's afternoon tea, all served on a tablecloth with chinaware and metal cutlery. Service starts with a hot towel followed by a drink and nuts, and I got one of their mocktails called a fizzberry, which is cranberry juice and tonic water. For the starter I got the smoked salmon, trout and prawn, and the seafood was tasty, as was the pickled cucumber, but they also put some radicchio in the salad, which was super bitter, so 7 out of 10 for that. This bread was also quite nice, though just a bit on the stodgy side. Then for the main I got a duo of Welsh lamb cutlet and shoulder with celeriac gratin and mushy peas, and whilst its presentation isn't exactly stunning, it did taste good. The lamb was tender, the celeriac gratin was delicious, and celeriac isn't exactly a common vegetable, so I liked the variety. Then the mushy peas were just fine, not as good as most fish and chip shops. Overall, this was a good main course with a very generous portion and well seasoned, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Now there's one happy customer. Lastly, for dessert, a warm chocolate, orange and walnut cake with vanilla custard. Pretty good, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video so far. I'm working hard to reach 5k subscribers to keep a house over this cat's head. Also, just to give an idea of the privacy in each suite, this is me poking my camera well above head level and you basically can't see anyone. So I would say privacy is very good, which I appreciate. And now for the infamous loo review. It was pretty big and kept clean throughout the flight. One small complaint though is that there were only 4 toilets in the business cabin shared between 76 seats, so queues did occasionally form. Now let's take a break from watching Paddington and Peru to go over the in-flight entertainment system. It's a decent 18.5 inch screen, but other airlines do have much better screens. Emirates' new A350 screen, for example, has a 23 inch 4K screen, which is much better than this. Also, navigating through the interface, I was struck by how much they seem to be pushing Paramount Plus. Clearly they're sponsored because the first option to appear is always a Paramount Plus show, and there are pop-ups encouraging people to sign up for Paramount Plus. But apart from that advertising, it's a good selection of movies and TV shows, with some music and games thrown in for good measure. I also like how far you can zoom in on the in-flight map, despite it being a bit laggy at times. Also, whilst I'm not using it here, I suggest you use the remote to navigate, as leaning forward to use the touchscreen is just a bit too far to be easy. With a few hours to go, we started flying over Canada, and I spotted this town called Saint Lunaire with a population of 600 in the far north of Newfoundland. And then it became cloudy, so there wasn't much else to see until we began our descent. But before that, we still had afternoon tea to enjoy, which was a choice of ham and cheese brioche bun or a mushroom cheese caramelized onion and chutney sandwich. Despite being almost criminally underfilled, the ham and cheese sandwich tasted good, and there was a nice salad on the side and an average chocolate muffin. So overall, I would probably rate this one another 7 out of 10. And to drink, I got a ginger ale, not whiskey as it might look like here. Now get ready for the approach into New York's JFK, where we would catch a glimpse of the Manhattan skyline before landing and taxiing for about 20 minutes, and eventually arriving in Terminal 8. But then I accidentally pressed pause on my phone, so here's a slightly unfocused landing filmed on my GoPro instead. All in all, I'm pretty happy with this British Airways business class experience today. Comparing it to other airlines I've flown business class on, I would say it does quite well. The seat is one of the best out there, especially with the addition of a door. I prefer it to Finnair's innovative no-recline seat, as well as Singapore Airlines and Cathay Pacific seats. For Cathay though, I've only tried the older A350 seat, not the new Aria suite, which could well be better. I also think it's considerably better than the seat of Iberia, BA's sister airline, and also Virgin Atlantic's herringbone seats. The way they make people face each other is a travesty. Then service and food-wise, I would say BA are good, but not great. Certainly falling short of Cathay Pacific and Singapore Airlines, both of which addressed me by name as soon as I boarded, and both having better food, plus Cathay have dine-on-demand options too. But from several flights over the years, I would say food and service is better than both Iberia and Finnair, and comparable to Virgin Atlantic, their main competitor. Unfortunately, that's where my experience flying long-haul business class ends, so I can't compare them to any of the big Middle Eastern airlines or US airlines. Now, price-wise, BA's business class, especially from London to New York one way, can be very expensive. But I used points for this flight, and it ended up costing a reasonable 50,000 Avios plus £437.50. So if you value Avios at 1p each, that's an equivalent value of about £940. Not too bad compared to the cash prices shown on their website. JFK Terminal 8 is not great, by the way. The immigration queue was quite long, and the agent was pretty hostile. Especially when they saw my wife had a Vietnamese passport and they whisked her off for a private screaming room to question her some more. But that ended up taking only about 10 minutes extra, so I guess it could have been worse. And after that, we were unleashed into the United States of America. Now here's my final score, so pause if you want to read the whole thing, but to summarise, the flight was a contrast between a great in-flight experience and a poor on-the-ground experience. And since Heathrow Terminal 5 is such an integral hub for BA, that is quite a large consideration when booking them. And last but not least, here's my airline tier list where I score every airline I've flown on this channel, where BA are remaining at a respectable 7 out of 10, mainly because whilst I love the seat and in-flight service, the Heathrow experience leaves a lot to be desired. Now to close out the video, here are a few shots of New York, a great city by the way, almost as good as London. And in my next video, I'll be continuing this USA trip with a JetBlue flight to Las Vegas, followed by a few flights with United, Hawaiian and Virgin Atlantic back from Los Angeles to London. So like and subscribe to get notified when they come out, and thanks for watching and goodbye.